Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues!
I have nothing to prove to you.
When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another late night edition of Citizen Dame After Dark. I am Lauren Priest Brooks. With me, as always, is Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hello.
It's actually not that late. It's 8 o'clock for me. It's 5 o'clock for you. But,
yeah.
but we're tired. We're tired, and it's definitely after dark for me. So, you know, this is definitely we're gonna call this a late night edition.
I like it.
How are you, Karen?
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. But it's that good kind of exhaustion where you've had fun, and also I've been walking a lot this last couple of days, so my body is just tired, but it's fine. It's good. How about you?
Pretty good. I had a good weekend. Got to see a friend that I really only known online, and so that was cool. It's always a bit odd meeting someone that you've talked with a lot.
Yeah.
Online. Well, I mean, like when we met, it's just like, hey, I've talked to you a lot, but I've never actually been in the same room with you.
Right.
I remember one Tribeca Film Festival. I met Diana Drum, who we know from I knew her from Twitter originally, and it was very bizarre because I was in line for a film. And she kind of walked by and she sort of looked at me and I sort of looked at her, and we're both like, I know you. They're just like, I know you. Who are you? It was very weird. And it was the same kind of thing where it's like, you talk to someone a lot and never actually met them. So
yeah,
it was fun. And I also got to see, and we're not going to talk about this because we're going to talk about it another time, but I have to say, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein adaptation. I got to see it in New York in 35 millimeter. It was I think it was a sold out screening. It's gorgeous. It's just a beautiful film, beautifully acted, directed, everything. I really liked it. And so I encourage anybody, it's in limited release right now. It's only in a couple of theaters. It was only in 2 theaters in New York right now. But if you get a chance to see it on the big screen, definitely do it. It is absolutely worth it.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, and it's a long film, I will say, but it does things with the Frankenstein story that I think are both very much in keeping with Shelley's original novel, as well as doing something different and something that I've not seen done with Frankenstein before.
I love that, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm so excited. Guillermo del Toro, his outlook on the world and his way of bringing the world into his movies, I don't know. There's just nobody making films like he is, and his Pinocchio. I think the way that he changes the setting, but he still keeps with the entire point of that story, but just uses very specific times and places to tell it in a new way. I imagine Frankenstein will be similar.
Yeah, it's very similar in that sense. And I'm not going to say, I've had a couple of people ask me if it's a really close adaptation of the book, which it's yes and no. I think that it captures the philosophy and the ethos of the book better than any other Frankenstein adaptation that I've seen. But it does depart significantly from the book in a number of different places. And it does incorporate also things from older films and from Frankenstein stories that we've seen before. But I that's why I was saying, I do think that it's doing something with Shelley's story that is both its own thing and that is also very deeply connected to the story. And so similar, to the Pinocchio. I will say I cried like 3 times during Frankenstein.
Oh wow!
So, like I was, and the woman next to me was getting choked up too, and I was just like, oh my god, oh my god.
It's always a little vindicating when the person near you is also crying.
The audience was definitely engaged with the film. It was fun to watch that with them.
I love that, and it also makes me so frustrated about Netflix insisting on things just not being in the theater. You know, I know you and I have had lots of conversations over the years about the attitude toward you have to, like, from people who are like, you have to see this on the big screen. But I think that there's a happy medium we can all agree on, and Netflix is refusing to do that. So
well, and I mean that's the thing. So it's something like this. I'm saying, like, I'm encouraging you, if you get to see it on the big screen, definitely do it. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a bad movie on the small screen. I don't think you will have sacrificed some sort of emotional connection to the film if you only see it on a television.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a different experience. And this film, I do think that there is, it's definitely experience to have if you can have it. If you can't, that's nothing against you, right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I'm glad that it's going to be on Netflix next month, and it's going to kind of get its audience that way. But it's really spectacular. It's I think it's probably the closest. It's very close to Crimson Peak in a lot of ways. I think it's doing some interesting with the use of the Gothic and color and monstrosity and things like that. So that was the film that kept coming to my mind when I was watching it.
Well, I love that movie, so that's great.
Yes. So moving on from that, we're going to talk about another visually arresting film that I had never seen before. And that is David Cronenberg's The Fly from 1986. And of course, this film is based on the 1958 film The Fly, which was directed by Kurt Newman and starred Al Hedison, Patricia Owens, and Vincent Price. A rare turn from Vincent Price during this era where he is not playing the villain or the protagonist. Like he's just sort of the guy off to the side being like, there's some weird shit going on. It's always weird to see Vincent Price in these roles. You're just like, that's not okay. Something's wrong with my brother-in-law. My brother, I believe. But so the 1986 film is basically a remake of the 1958 one. It was produced by Mel Brooks, and we talked about the fact that Mel Brooks produced The Elephant Man and a number of other films that are kind of not in keeping with what we think of when we think of Mel Brooks. But I just thought that was interesting that this is one of his productions.
Yeah. Although knowing that he produced The Elephant Man, it makes sense. Like it's not that surprising that he would also do this one, because I feel like it taps into this this type of what's the word? Like a social issues movie that has something to say, but does it in a really really interesting and unique way, but is also very different from the stuff that Mel Brooks himself makes. I don't know, like that just doesn't surprise me now.
It's and actually his interest in, and it's in the comic vein, but his interest in the grotesque, and which can trend into comedy. If so, Young Frankenstein is a good example of that, right? That can trend into comedy, but if you put it in a horror realm, then you get something like The Fly, or that sort of kind of point where you just shift the milieu a little bit. You shift the tone a little bit, and you've got a comedy or a tragedy, and that's basically what you've got with The Fly. The Fly, and we'll talk about this in a minute. I do think that The Fly kind of treads that line where there are places where it's like, this could just be kind of funny. And it doesn't ever tip over into it. Does a little bit, but there's a little bit of satire going on, I think. But it doesn't generally like trip over into that. It is actually a very tragic film in a lot of ways.
Right. but I think it's one of those movies where, depending on your mindset when you're sitting down to watch it, you're either horrified or humored by it. Like, I can see where, under the right conditions, you're laughing through this movie, even though it's not intended to be funny.
Well, there was one point, and we'll talk about that, but there was one point nearing the end of the film that I was just like, it was sort of that laughter, not of, oh, this is funny, but it's like, oh my God, please stop.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
Just let it end, let it stop.
Yeah.
It was that kind of like, oh Jesus. Yeah. So so this of course was directed by David Cronenberg, who had done a couple of films before this. He'd done Scanners and Videodrome, I think, by this point. And he's like, you know, already sort of an interesting filmmaker, but this sort of elevated him in a lot of ways. It really brought him to the attention, particularly of American audiences. Because this was a big budget film starring, of course, Jeff Goldblum, who plays Seth Grundle, and Geena Davis, who I guess was not kind of the first choice, in part because she was at the time, her and Jeff Goldblum were dating. And there was this like attitude of like, oh, we don't really want to like do this real life couple, right? And basically everybody that they tested, they didn't like anybody else. She was right for the part. And I think she's fantastic for the part, and they're great together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it did win the Academy Award for Best Makeup, which I think was very, very deserved. Like beyond anything. It is some spectacular like makeup work, special effects. The decay, Seth's decay is truly fascinating and bizarre and distressing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they did a great job with that. The way that the creature design is done, but you have to make that a believable transformation within the confines of what they had available to them in the 1980s. And I one of the things that I love about the progression of the makeup before it goes into full creature effects is that it starts off so subtle, like something, you know, something starts to change and it's like, wait, this is weird. And then by the time that he starts, like, you really know something is wrong. Of course, we as the audience already know what's wrong, but none of the characters do. And just watching that progression as he gets just more gross and horrifying, it like, in a weird way, I don't know if this is going to make sense when I say it out loud, but the makeup effects almost become another character in the story, because he's still Seth, but he's also becoming something different, and that is reflected so well in the way that it starts off with some weird scaling and some weird, kind of goopy, lumps on his face. And then it just becomes a little bit worse and a little bit worse. So we're watching his degeneration. Every time we see him, it's a little bit more. And I really like how you can understand why the characters take a while to figure out what's happening. He doesn't just come out of the machine looking like a fly man. He has to go through a metamorphosis.
Yeah, and it's so have you seen the original The Fly?
Yes, but years ago.
So I think that you probably remember that actually The Fly most of the film is a flashback.
Yeah.
And what it opens on, it's actually kind of a really interesting structure, because it opens on the lead character, and I can't remember his name. It's not Seth, but so the lead character actually having killed himself in a hydraulic press. And there's this question that his wife is actually suspected of murdering him. And so what we get then is the backstory, and we get to go back and find out what happened to him effectively. But when you get to the point of like the actual reveal of him as the Fly, basically he's got like a fly arm, a gigantic like insect arm, and an insect head, right? So it isn't this, we're not watching a gradual transformation. He has gone from sort of being a full human being to being a literally half fly.
Right.
Whereas obviously with this, we're actually watching this idea, right, of like, okay, if you took a fly and a person and fused them together and then showed the progression of that. Like, what would happen? How would the physical being of a person transform into this kind of bizarre humanoid fly thing? Right.
Yeah.
And it's not just the one-to-one of like, he's now turned into a gigantic fly. It's something much weirder.
Yeah. And well, and one of the things that I think is really interesting about the choice to go through the process with him, and the fact that it takes a while, it takes several days or maybe weeks. It's not totally clear how long it is, but it takes a while for the fly essentially to emerge from him. And what I think is a less obvious but really interesting idea is, maybe this is gonna sound weird or just gross, I don't know, but like, you can go from not having a fly in your house to you leave something out and it rots, and then things just kind of form from that, and you end up with like larva, and then you like flies can sort of essentially come from nothing. You don't have to introduce a fly in your house to end up with a fly in your house, basically. And so I think that it's interesting watching, even though obviously there's a fly in his house and it ends up in the machine and he ends up being fused with it. But I think that watching that actual scientific change happen over the course of some period of time, it's like, oh yeah, that's actually kind of how it works with flies too, and so it's like this really interesting visualization of that transformation.
It's like Seth becomes Seth, the Seth that we know becomes this larva that is going to eventually break into, and that's essentially what happens. He's like losing pieces of his body by the end of it until he's like turned into this fly creature.
Yeah.
This like insectoid thing. It's not even like, it's barely recognizable even as a fly. It's recognizable as a fly, but it's not recognizable as a fly. I think it's mean to flies, to be honest. Just like, the fly is a perfectly fine little insect,
Right.
So it's not that.
Right. That's very true. But the fly also, it emerges from this human form. It's really interesting. And I know there's some things we can talk about with metaphors and things in this movie, but I think one of them, it's interesting that a human who's accidentally spliced with a fly, other than size, the main resulting creature is mostly fly. It's very little of the human part. He doesn't even have the ability to speak anymore. And I think as a metaphor is really interesting to show how something so tiny can completely change who we are fundamentally. And so I think that's just an interesting part of it.
Well, so let's talk about that, about like how the fly emerges. So you've got this character, Seth Grundle, who is brilliant and eccentric, and I really like how this film jumps us into everything really quickly. It doesn't take a long time to get to the main point of the story, which is Seth's relationship with Ronnie, who's a science journalist, played by Geena Davis, and basically he picks her up, right? And he's like, no, I have this really amazing invention. Like, come back to my laboratory. I want to show you this really amazing invention. And she thinks it's a line, and it kind of is, but it's also not, because he does actually have a really amazing invention.
Yeah.
And so what he shows her is the teleportation device, these two kind of telephone pod things that can move right now inanimate, inert matter from one pod to the other. And of course, this is spectacular. And she, they basically come to an agreement where she's going to document him eventually coming to the point of being able to transport a human being, to move a person from one pod to the other. And this is going to, change travel. It's going to change kind of the whole structure of the world. And he's right about that in a lot of ways. And things go wrong fairly quickly. They start this romantic relationship. He's sort of this dorky, very somewhat inept scientist who's also incredibly hot at the same time, like very fit. Even before he gets like fly powers, he is very fit.
He is.
But she likes him. He's sweet. He is a nice contrast to her ex-boyfriend, Stathis, who is just an asshole in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And is also happens to be her editor at the Science Journal. And eventually, like, Seth is able to transport a creature, a baboon, from one pod to the other. And this is, of course, very exciting. And Ronnie is like, all right, well, she gets this message from Stathis. She's like, I'm going to go off and deal with this. And then I'll come back and we'll celebrate. And she doesn't come back quick enough, basically. And Seth begins to get increasingly jealous and increasingly drunk. And he decides the baboon's fine. The baboon's just kind of sitting there doing nothing, being a baboon. And he decides that he's going to transport himself, because the baboon's obviously all right, so there's nothing to worry about. And of course, he is trapped in the teleportation device. Without knowing it, he's trapped with a fly. And this is then what sets off everything else. But it's really important that this all starts with this kind of jealous anger at Ronnie. And of like him imagining that she's off, she's sleeping with her ex-boyfriend, she's doing something else, and that his sort of way of lashing out at her is to teleport himself. After he had agreed not to do it without her there and everything. And of course, this lashing out of anger is what ends up destroying him in the end.
Yeah. It's funny because one of the things I was thinking about as I was rewatching it was he's an incel before we started using that term. And his libido drives so much of what happens in the movie, because even in the beginning when they're at this party, it's like some reception for these guys, and he's there, he's feeling lonely. He's been working on this project that he can't talk about with anybody. First of all, because nobody will take him seriously. As soon as they hear about it, they're gonna be like, that's not possible. And also because he doesn't science stuff gets stolen, he doesn't want his work stolen. He doesn't want to put himself in the line of fire for other people. And he hits on her and he brings her to his house. He brings a reporter to his house and shows her what he has and walks her through everything, gives her basically full access to it, not because he wants her to be able to tell the story for him, but just because he wants to impress her. And this is the only way he knows how to do. And so then once he's starting to try to figure out what's going on, then he has one very failed experiment with the baboon's brother. So he has two baboons, and the first one, it does not go well. And he starts to think, well, the reason I can't move anything that's animate, anything that has a pulse, basically, is because I personally don't know enough of the flesh. I need to study the flesh. And that's part of why he gets into this relationship with Ronnie, is because it's for his scientific advancement. It's, it happens that he likes her and they have good chemistry and everything, but that's not what it starts out as for him.
Yeah, there's this kind of divide that he's got between the mind and the body, right? Mm-hmm. And the body exists, and the body has its needs and desires, but it's something that he's repressing. So I was about to say something that he's like completely separated himself from, but he hasn't. He has all of those needs, and he has all of that kind of energy and that kind of, desire, but no real healthy way of expressing it. Mm-hmm. And so he effectively is like, oh, she's like almost a part of his study. I think you're right. And and the whole thing is that, like, she says, I have to go deal with this, right? And right before she says that, she's like, you know what we should do now that this has been successful? We should go away together. We should like go on a break. We can like just go off and, lie on a beach somewhere. She's talking about them being in a relationship, and he's like, oh, this is a relationship. Right. Yeah. And that entire, and you're just like, yeah, because because I'm sorry, because she's a normal person, because she's like a person who's like, yes, this all makes sense. Yes, this is a relationship. And he just like he's got this consistent disconnect between, and it's a unhealthy disconnect too. It isn't just that he doesn't understand it, it's that there is an unhealthiness to it.
Yeah.
It's like he is repressing that part of himself. It's not that he doesn't have that part, he's repressing it. Right. And it's coming out obviously in very bad ways. And the way that it comes out is this experiment, which seems successful, but that actually like combines his molecules with that of a fly, combines his DNA with a fly, and transforms him from, this basically, he's kind of, I think you're right, he's kind of the original nice guy TM sort of thing.
Right.
Because he is nice. He is nice and he's sweet and everything. And then he's got this other side to him that he just fails to really deal with in a healthy way. And it becomes nastier and nastier, and it literally begins destroying him.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk about this being sort of toxic masculinity run amok, and I wanted to quote a line from this is from Leanne McLarty, and she wrote an essay called "Beyond the Veil of the Flesh," and specifically about all of Cronenberg, like not all of Cronenberg's films, but a number of Cronenberg's films. But this is about The Fly specifically. And so what she says is Seth's monstrousness is a function of his violent expression of aggression and his will to control. His monstrous transformation is associated with an increase in traditional masculinity. And that's, I think, an interesting point that the film does, is that Seth's first reaction to having like this become part of this fly, he doesn't know it at the time, he doesn't know why it's like this is happening to him. He suddenly gets like really physical, right? He gets really physically active. He's got all of this energy, he's got all of this libido, he's become this perfect physical specimen, and he starts talking about like, it's just purified me, it's made me into this thing. And Ronnie is watching this, and at a certain point she's like, this is not normal, what the thing is wrong here? Yeah. And she can't convince him that what's happening is not good. Like this, there's something off, there's something weird going on. And even at that point, he hasn't physically changed that much, but he's there's something wrong with him, and it's obvious, and he sees this, no, there's something right with me now. So I just want to know if you had any thoughts on that. About
I do. I do. We've kind of already touched on this, but I think part of that is it really enhances the journey that he's going on in mind and body, and because it starts to change him on the inside first, and eventually this fly literally bursts out of him, and I think that so it makes sense that his behavior would start to change before his physical appearance would. I think that's part of that progression. He's been fundamentally changed on the inside first, and I think that that's kind of hinted at when he has the failed trial with the baboon that gets turned inside out. And so in a way he also has done that, it's just represented in a much different way, and obviously there are other elements involved, and so I think on a sciencey, physical, from that standpoint, it's an interesting representation there. And then I think that part of it too is that what's emerging is not just him being different, it's unlocking some things that were probably already there. They were just suppressed. And now he's becoming something that doesn't care. Flies don't care. They don't care that they're in your business. They do what they want. And that's essentially what he's turning into. And his inhibitions are going away. All the things that have stopped him from sharing his work, have stopped him from sharing his life with people. Those are the first things to go.
It's interesting that the fly is being used as this, because so often when we have these kind of metaphors, they tend to go to like the animal side, so like wolves, right? The werewolf or the lion, or like that kind of like those very sort of quintessentially masculine images. And this side is obviously the insectoid side. And it is true, insects, whenever I hear, like, I don't know if you watch, it's kind of a weird association, but I don't know if you watch the television show QI, but QI, they like talk about all these different facts, right? And whenever they bring up a fact that is like truly horrifically disgusting, it is always about an insect. Always. Like, it's
insects
like,
are gross.
Because it's a completely, I mean, I'm sure that, probably if a fly could think, it would think that I was gross, but but yeah, exactly. Like, insects we do associate them with disease, decay, with, like you say, the formation of maggots, the falling apart of things, all of them, particularly flies, which are attracted to trash and a fruit falling apart, everything. But they have an amorality that is disgusting to human beings, and that we find, completely repulsive. And one of the things about a lot of insects is that, they don't care, right? It is like they will eat their babies, they will eat their young. They don't really have all of those things that we associate with this, important emotions. They just don't have them. That's not the way that they're built.
Yeah.
And so they're so separate from us. And then you've got this story where it's a creature like a fly becoming so enwrapped with this person and bringing out like that kind of, it's not even like an animalism. It's insectism. Like, it's that insectoid element of like, this is like going back to the beginning of life or something like that, when we really didn't care.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to take something that is so far apart from human beings, that we think are so far apart, and to marry it to a human being and be like, okay, what happens with this? And yeah, he pretty much loses everything except a sort of a will to power and a will to have sex and eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. And kill other things that get in his way to get those two things.
Yeah, he's basically turned into just those the basic animal needs, but he still does have himself in there. Like, he's still there, so he still also has this urge toward the science and wanting to evolve and wanting to bring forth this technology. And so by the end of it, he's got a plan for how he can even continue this evolution into something even more grotesque and disgusting.
Well, and this is where I do think this was also where the film gets interesting, and that marrying of that thing. It's not just that he regresses to the insect, it's that marrying of the insect with the human intellect, right? With the intellect of science specifically. So he finally is just like, okay, something's wrong. Like, it's when when his fingernails start pulling out, it's like, okay, something's not good, right? And he eventually, like, begins to interrogate his computers, like, what happened? And he finds out that he is a fly. He is part of the fly is part of him, he is part of the fly. Which again is this interesting kind of departure from what the original film was, because a huge section of the original film is dedicated to this pursuit of the fly, the literal, like, physical fly that was that had been in the teleporter with him. The idea is that if he can catch it and they can go back through, they can find a way to put him back together again.
Yeah, to separate themselves. And
and what happens with Seth is that he learns fairly quickly that's just not possible. You're now fused with the fly, right? It is you and you are it. And so he has to then start navigating that. And he kind of begins, he kind of goes back and forth between, I'm diseased and this is the new stage of human evolution. Like, that he's become this Superman almost.
Yeah.
Even as he's falling apart, even as, like, his body is dripping onto the floor.
Yeah, it's interesting that he is not horrified by that, really. Like, as as things start to fall off of him, he doesn't see, even when his face has changed and it's all lumpy and goopy, he doesn't seem that concerned by it. This very attractive man, he's, you know, he's not 1980s Jeff Goldblum, come on, you know. But he's not so concerned with the altering of his physical appearance in the way that we might imagine that he would be. You know, he's not like, oh my gosh, I'm turning ugly, it's I'm turning into something else. And
well, and it vacillates too, because so when he initially begins pulling out his fingernails and realizing that like parts of his skin are just coming off, he's freaked out, as one would be. And then at a certain point he's like horrified by it, and then there's another point at which he's exalted by it, like he feels he's excited over it. And it kind of goes back and forth, and the entire time sort of Ronnie is watching what's happening. She kind of comes in and out, and she sees him at these various stages of transformation. And the entire, you know, at one point she's like, he's so sad, like, because it is sad, it's horrible. And then, but at the same time, he's like, at one point he literally tells her, you have to leave because the insect is taking over, and if you don't leave, I'm going to hurt you.
Right, that's true.
Like he says that very explicitly. That's true. But it's like going back and forth. So it is this like combination of the human intellect with this mindless insect at the same time.
Yeah. I think what strikes me though is that he's always interested in the science. Like even when he thinks he's dying, he just wants to figure out. I mean, at first he's looking for how to fix it, but ultimately he's looking for what to do. Like, what can he learn from this? Because in his core, he is a scientist. He wants to learn about you know, the sciencey parts of it. That's what drives him forward always. Well,
and then it gets weirder.
It does. Because why wouldn't it? It's David Cronenberg.
Well, and of course, it can't be a Cronenberg film without a weird gynecological something. We just have to have that. There's got to be weird sex in there. Something has to. And so I did thank God that this was not actually Ronnie giving birth to a larva, like, to a maggot. I was very happy.
Yes.
I was like, oh, thank God it's a dream. I don't have to look at that. But so Ronnie discovers that she's pregnant, and there seems to be, because they've had sex after he's gone through the transformation, right? So she doesn't know, basically, like what is this baby gonna be, right? So she has this horror of it, and her response to it is like, okay, I'm gonna get an abortion, because she cannot risk it. Like, whatever, she can't bring that into the world.
Well, because she doesn't know if this is going to be the before or the after version. You know?
She doesn't know how much of this baby is going to be a fly.
It's a fair concern.
It's a very fair concern. But so she's kind of heartbroken about this, but she's decided that like she's going to do this, and she tries to tell Seth, but he is kind of at the point where he has completely fallen apart, and he's decided that he's like this insect politician god.
His weird foray into the politics of it is very funny.
He's gonna be the first insect politician.
Yes.
But so she is like, she's gonna go get an abortion. He stops her from getting an abortion because he finds out, basically. And he stops her from getting an abortion. And again, it's that, you know, it's going back to that toxic masculinity, that will to power and that will to control, and the possessiveness that has kind of characterized him. That, and like he says to her, how, you know, don't destroy the last part of me. Like, that's what he's thinking. He's not thinking about the fact that this baby could be a fly. And that what is happening to him, all of this horrible stuff that is happening to him could be passed on to his child.
Right.
He's not thinking about the horror that Ronnie has to experience, about whether or not she even wants to have his baby. It's just like, don't destroy this part of me. You know, this is all that's left. And that is the point, I think, as horrible as it is, it's also the point where I'm just like, oh, I have no sympathy left for this man.
Right.
They're like, he can't even let go of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the whole reason that he finds out that this is happening is because he follows her, because he's still jealous of Stathis. He's, and he's become very possessive of her. And so he follows her, and he sees her at the gynecologist's office. By the way, shout out to Cronenberg, who plays the gynecologist. And and then he overhears her talking to Stathis about wanting to just get rid of it. And that's where he's like, I have to take action. It's because he's not trusting her. He has to follow her. And then he decides to basically kidnap her and stop her from doing what she needs to do for herself, because what she wants apparently does not matter anymore to him.
Well, and throughout the film, there has been this sort of desire to control her and to control her body, particularly. So that initial wave of jealousy that he feels, even though there's no indication that she's sleeping with her ex-boyfriend, he just decides that she must be.
Well, I mean, that even starts when he first meets her, the controlling aspect. Like, he wants to brag and show off his toy that he's created, but he also doesn't want to let her do anything with that information.
Yeah, she's got to be kind of this passive receptor for him. And then later, when he initially transforms, he decides that, this has purified him, and he's like, well, you have to go through now, like, because it'll do this for you, and we'll be this like amazing power couple. And she's basically like, no, that scares the shit out of me. And also, whatever is going on with you is not quite normal. And she also saw the monkey turn inside out. So there's all kinds of reasons not to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And that's where he like loses his shit. He gets increasingly angry at her. He gets increasingly violent with her. And then he's like, well, then I'll find someone else. He goes out and picks up a woman in a bar and breaks her boyfriend's arm, and like all of this stuff that it's every time kind of Ronnie tells him no, it's this transformation into this higher degree of violence and this higher degree of toxic masculinity. Until finally, and he at that point, and then he was like, we're gonna fuse together, we're all going to go through.
It's gonna be great. Who wouldn't want this?
Well, it is just like that. It's so on the nose in so many ways, but it's just like that. Oh, it's the perfect nuclear family. They're all just connected forever in this horrible mound of flesh. And she's like, no, I will not do that.
No,
I don't want that either. I'm good with not doing that. So it is just that continual sort of that enforcement of the horror almost of this connect this like flesh of my flesh kind of thing. It's very, very bizarre. That is the point. That's the point in the film where he goes through he tries to kind of force her to go through, and then she gets like what Stathis shows up actually, and then like severs the connection. And so she gets out, but then he gets fused with the teleporter itself.
Right.
And that was the point at which I was like, okay, can we just stop that? Can this just end? This at that point, I was just like, this poor man, just let him die, please. Please just let him die. Like, now he's part of the teleporter. Okay.
Right. And still trying to keep going.
So, yeah, and then finally, like, he gets Ronnie to, like, he's just like, please just shoot me. Like, all right. Okay, let's end this.
Yeah.
I do think one of the other interesting elements has kind of come down to this. One of the other interesting elements that, particularly with this film coming out in 1986, since it's kind of middle of the AIDS crisis.
Yeah.
And this film in particular, particularly in the early sections of Seth's kind of transformation, a lot of his physical transformation is very, the marks on his face, et cetera, very reminiscent of some of the symptoms of AIDS. And this also whole idea connected to it of like, what is this? So at one point he talks about, oh, I have like a cancer. He thinks that it's a strange cancer. And that was one of the things that was talked about when AIDS first became prevalent. Like the way that people talk about it was like, it's like this weird cancer.
Yeah.
At one point, Stathis says, you know, oh, what if he's infectious? And at that stage, you're kind of like, no, he's fused with a fly, actually.
Right.
He's not infectious. It's gross, but he's not infectious. But it is all that like, I think the film does really well, that sort of hysteria of something is wrong. We don't know what it is, but it's destroying you from the inside out. And it's very much drawing in some of the elements and the hysteria surrounding the AIDS crisis.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know what else to say to that. Go ahead.
I was going to say that this was something that people kind of latched on to when the film came out initially, and Cronenberg actually had something to say about it, and he was surprised by it. What he was saying was, for me though, there's something about the Fly story that was much more universal, that was about aging and death. And so his attitude towards it was that this was more about disease, period. So it's not specifically in reference to AIDS, according to him, but is more in reference to the experience of aging and the experience of disease, terminal disease, watching someone change, basically, and not being able to do anything about it. I feel like, given the time period, I do feel like that's maybe a little bit disingenuous. He may not have been thinking exactly in that way. The writer may not have been thinking exactly in that way, but there's too many aspects with the time period that just recall the AIDS crisis too closely.
I mean, at the time, they would have, the folks making this would have definitely known and had already lost people they cared about to AIDS. It really was something that affected Hollywood deeply. And so either he didn't want to acknowledge that and have that be the story and have people say, well, this is a metaphor for AIDS, which I can totally understand, or it was just so in his subconscious that he's making this without really thinking specifically, this is the story I'm trying to tell. I could see either of those being true.
Yeah, I think that it has a referentiality that you can't really escape.
Yeah.
So there's a subtext there that is just sort of there and could very well just be a product of the culture that it's being made in.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something similar with drug addiction as well, because Seth's initial experience, like that euphoria, that energy, that like so much of what is being depicted there is so close to the experience that drug addicts have, especially in the initial stages of drug addiction, where you know, you have this, like, I feel great. I feel like I can just take on the world. Everything is wonderful. And then you need it more and more and more. And it begins destroying you at the same time. Particularly, so again, 1986, you're talking about cocaine, you're talking about crack, you're talking about some of the really serious heroin.
Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign.
So there, yeah, exactly. So that's already, again, whether or not it's in an intentional reference, it is a part of the culture, and it's something that's being reflected in the film.
Right. Yeah.
So any final thoughts on The Fly? Anything else you want to mention?
Well, I mean, this was your first time watching it, so I would like to know how you felt about it, what your thoughts, your reaction to it as a first-time viewer.
My reaction to it is very similar to my reaction to a lot of Cronenberg's films. I think it's really interesting. I know what I really appreciate what he's doing. I understand what he's doing. Like I said, the makeup effects, the special effects, everything just really, they are brilliant. Like, I very much believe that this was a man turning into a fly. It works really well, again, holding up from 1986 in particular, like seeing that the practical effects, everything that they did with the makeup is really remarkable. It is actually, for some of the reasons we've been talking about. I think that it's messy in its message and in what it's, and it's not so much that it needs to be a specific kind of metaphor, but there's a little bit of like, what story are you telling a little for me? What are you trying, like, not even what are you trying to say, but like, what is the story? What is, what are you trying to convey to your audience? And yeah, by the end of it, I did feel that it was a bit much. That was my Letterboxd review. Was that by the end of the film, I was like, well, this was a bit much. And I don't 100% say that that's a bad thing. I like horror films that are a bit much. It's just a lot. Like, it's a lot to watch. You sit through that movie like that was a lot. I did think Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis, I think, are wonderful together. Goldblum in particular is like, he keeps that humanity that kind of keeps us going, even at the points where Seth is so like repulsive, not just physically, but just emotionally like repulsive. There's still that, like, you understand why, she cares about him and she cares about what happens to him, and she's also horrified by him. And I think that both of them convey that really well.
Yeah. This is one of those movies that for some reason was on TV a lot when I was a kid.
I saw pieces of it too. And like, yeah, it popped up on like AMC and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I even remember before that, it was on just regular network TV. They would run a lot of movies, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. And this was just one that was always on TV. It went through a phase where it was like every week, it felt like. And yeah, so this is a movie that I think has been part of my I don't know, part of my awareness since I was literally a child. And it's interesting when I have these movies and I get to introduce them to somebody who has never seen them before, much later, and then have these conversations and looking at things. Because when I was a kid, seeing this, it was just this really gross, scary movie about a guy who basically turns into a fly. And looking at it now, I'm like, well, there is so much more to it. And I can see, all the things that we've been talking about in this episode. I can see the thoughts and the consideration that goes into the characters and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's still a gross monster movie. And it's just a really well done one.
I mean, yeah, definitely. And it's kind of in some ways, I think it's become so notorious for its grossness, that we tend to miss maybe, or don't talk about it, or I've not seen it talked about as much, the actual underpinnings of it. And that's unfortunate, because that, like, the grossness, something I appreciate about this one, the grossness is there for a reason. Like, it isn't just, this is disgusting, let's look at something being disgusting, right? It is very deliberate, and there's a purpose to it. And this is something that, Cronenberg is doing something really interesting with. Whether or not I like that, I don't know. And that has always been my relationship to Cronenberg. Like, do I like this? I don't know. I have no clue.
That's been my relation. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, just watch The Brood. I remember last year, and it was being like, oh, I think I'm seeing like a window into a man's psyche, and I'm not certain I like it here.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about a lot of body horror in general. I'm not a huge fan of body horror. Every once in a while, I'll there will be one that comes out that I'm like, okay, I understand what this is doing and why it's using the body horror to tell its story. And is it effective? Is it not effective? And I think with The Fly, for myself, I think mostly it is effective. And I think that the reason that it is comes back to what you were saying before about Jeff Goldblum. At a certain point, he stops being a sympathetic character. And I don't think that is a flaw of the movie. I think that is intentional. Because if they continue to make him somebody that you're just feeling bad for the whole time, while he's also becoming increasingly toxic, I think then that would be a problem, and that would really make this something else. And I think because of the fact that we have that element of him, I I think for me, this movie works.
It's a tragedy. I think that's what it comes down to. It's a tragedy, and that doesn't mean that you necessarily always like the protagonist.
Right.
But what happens to him is tragic. It actually treads a line very well, I think, between us caring about him and being horrified by what's happening, but also not liking him in a lot of ways, without ever completely tipping over into one side or the other. And that kind of keeps us going, keeps us engaged.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely a Cronenberg film. I have to say that.
It is very much a Cronenberg. Yes.
No doubt. Did not bother me as much as Dead Ringers. I'm never watching Dead Ringers again. I hate, I don't even want to say I hate Dead Ringers. I do think it's a brilliant film, but I don't ever want to see it with my own two eyeballs ever again.
Nope, I'm good.
And I want to know what Cronenberg's thing is with gynecology. I'm like, bro, you use this a lot. Let's talk about it a little bit more. I know what it is with gynecology, but so I think that's gonna close us out for The Fly. And our next episode is one that I'm shocked we've not actually done this as an episode before. Is gonna be Halloween from 1978, the original Halloween, the introduction of Michael Myers, and directed by John Carpenter. So I'm looking forward to that.
So excited.
And of course, we always want to thank our wonderful patrons, who include Abby, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather, James, Judy, Carriata, Matt, Michelle, MK, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Roxy, Steve, and Sharon. Thank you for supporting us. We will have some new bonus episodes coming out pretty soon. And of course, you can re-listen to all of our Hitchcock Presents episodes, our Flag Means Death, just reminding everyone that our Flag Means Death episodes are up there as well. And we'll be having some new ones fairly soon. And of course, if you want to join their number, that's patreon.com/Citizen Dame. You get access to our episodes early, get those bonus apps, some fun little buttons and stuff like that. And also get to help us keep the lights on and not have to have any advertisements or anything else on here. And of course, we have our Ko-Fi. That's ko-fi.com/Citizen Dame if you just want to throw us a few bucks. And we have our website, that's citizendamepod.com, where we've got reviews and editorials and fun stuff there. You can also get in touch with us in a number of different ways. Our email is citizendamepod@gmail.com. And we are on Instagram and Blue Sky at Citizen Dame Pod. And our Letterboxd is at Citizen Dame. And of course, you can get in touch with us individually. Karen, where are you?
I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Karen M. Peterson.
And I am on Instagram and Letterboxd at LH Business. And that will close us out for this week. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
So I asked the computer if it had improved me, and it said it didn't know what I was talking about, and that's made me think very carefully about what I've been feeling and why, and I'm beginning to think that the sheer process of being taken apart atom by atom and put back together again, why, it's like coffee being put through a filter. It's somehow a purifying process. It's purified me. It's cleansed me. And I'll tell you, I think it's going to allow me to realize the personal potential I've been neglecting all these years, that I've been obsessively pursuing goal after goal.
Do you normally take coffee with your sugar?
What? You know, I just don't think I've ever given me a chance to be me. But, of course, interestingly, at the exact same moment that I achieved what will probably prove to be my life's work, that's the moment when I started being the real me, finally. So, listen, not to wax messianic, but it may be true that the synchronicity of those two events might blur the resultant individual effect of either individually. But it is, nevertheless, also certainly true, I will say now, however subjectively, that human teleportation, molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging. It makes a man a king. From the moment I walked out of the pod, I felt like $1 million. You know, I think I am going to have cannoli after all. Waiter, I mean, what an accomplishment. But what have I really done, though? All I've done is say to the world, let's go, move. Catch me if you can. Waiter, Jesus Christ.